Hey friends, John Bush here. Just here at Mueller Park in Austin, Texas. Having a good time with the kiddos. There they are back there. My daughter likes to climb trees. This is one of her favorite trees to climb. And I just wanted to do some commentary on masks and fear and COVID. And I'm still surprised at how many people wear masks when they're in their car by themselves, or if they're going on a walk with their significant other in a giant open space park. And it's not required to wear a mask while you're in a park. So it's not the law that, a lot of the stuff isn't even laws. A lot of these lockdown things are like edicts and codes, not actual law, emergency orders. But there's probably like 75% of the people are wearing masks. I even saw a woman with like a 2-year-old or 18-month-old baby. She put a mask on that baby, and that's definitely not required. And so it just got me thinking, there really must be a lot of fear, and people must genuinely think that the SARS-CoV2 virus is literally like everywhere. And I guess it's like a policy that people use to just have the mask on as much as possible. Like the people that drive around in the car alone, they must put it on as soon as they get out of the house, thinking that they're just venturing out into the outside world where the virus could be anywhere. Early on, took me a little while. Here's Agora, by the way, a little sweet. We call them Agora for agorism, of course. But, early on, one of the first big things for me that caused me to feel like, okay, this is kind of ridiculous. Because at first, I'm aware of all the New World Order and globalism and how they do a proper problem reaction solution paradigm. But at first I was like, let's see what this is all about. Let's give this some time. Let's see when some numbers come in. Is this really this deadly pandemic? And of course, I was watching documentaries on the Spanish flu and stuff, and talking to my girlfriend like, wow, this could be bad. And the first time that it really stuck for me that this is pretty ridiculous is when I myself was going around selling hand sanitizer. This is when the lockdowns were all happening. And I was like, I'm essential. I'm going to sell some freaking hand sanitizer. And I found myself washing my hands and wiping my hands and spraying my hands with this colloidal silver spray. I don't like the alcohol stuff. Whenever I would touch anything or pump the gas or go into the gas station. And it was just a couple days of that where I just kind of was like, what the hell am I doing? The virus isn't everywhere all the time, omnipresent, nor is it omnipotent. And so, of course, now fast forward, there's so much evidence out there, but it still just really puzzles me. And here in Austin, there never was any semblance of a severe outbreak, right? I understand in places like New York City, where everyone's packed and stacked, and there's a lot of air pollution and respiratory disease in general, perhaps things were a little more intense, but Austin's a healthy town. Lots of outdoor activities, lots of open space. There's residential areas downtown, but there's by no means skyscrapers or anything. And there was never anything crazy here. And in fact, I believe there's been like over 400 deaths, maybe 465. And just the same with other areas, the folks that are passing away usually have pre-existing conditions and are a lot older, right? Now, obviously that's a problem. We don't want people to pass away. But a lot of times, one thing that someone said that really stuck with me, and I think a lot of people don't want to approach this because maybe they feel insensitive, is that COVID-19 is really just making people die faster that were perhaps already on their way out the door. That's why a significant number of the deaths actually come from nursing homes, right? But here in Austin, there's nothing crazy going on. And whenever they started shouting and screaming about the hospitals about to reach capacity, or they're like, the hospitals are at 80%. And the viewer of the news, the local news, would be like, wow, 80%, that sounds really scary. And I was like, this doesn't sit well with me. So I went and did historical research and found reports and little journal stuff, and come to find out that 80% is an optimal capacity for some hospitals, and some private hospitals want there to be greater capacity because that's how they make their money. Like a hotel, they don't want to have 50% or 20% capacity. Uh-oh, there goes troublemaker. Trouble. Must be sniffing out this couple that lives together, but they're wearing a mask while they walk together. And I don't want to poke fun at people or be rude or cold-hearted, because I know, try to have compassion for people, and I know a lot of people are genuinely scared. But you know, it is that fear. It's the fear that enables manipulators and social engineers to control people. And so it's unfortunate. Some people may think that it's harmless, that it's just people in a park wearing a mask. What's the big deal? What's the big fault? What's the big foul? No harm, no foul. But when you dig a little bit deeper, you realize that this COVID stuff is part of a larger agenda, right? And I was just thinking of that funny meme where it's like, this is all part of a larger conspiracy, and it's a guy just standing there, and then there's a person in a hazmat suit, and they're like, oh, you're just paranoid. But, you know, with all the drills and the simulations and the Event 201 and the Crimson Contagion and even more, Derek Bros covers these really well. The Dark Winter video that he did, you can find it at theconsciousresistance.com. It's clear that either this type of thing was anticipated, or this type of thing, those drills and simulations were really scripting. So whenever they roll out the real-time thing, they can already be polished when they go on the news and when they do their press conferences. But there's a lot of stuff that's coming into fruition in an accelerated way, having to do with the Great Reset, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, shifting capitalism away from being for the benefit of shareholders and business owners to stakeholders, which is like everyone in the area, and the biomedical surveillance and the furthering of ID 2020, the Gavi Vaccine Alliance, blockchain biometric identification, where people's immunity gets stored on the blockchain with your immunity passport, digital certificates. All this stuff is coming down the pike, and a lot of it is unreasonable. And I think the general public would find it to be unreasonable and intrusive, in fact, that you have to show some sort of medical history or that you've received this or that in order to go on public transportation or fly or go into a grocery store. But of course, you really have to ramp up the fear and drive the fear up in order for people to accept these onerous measures. And that's why when I see a bunch of people wearing a mask playing in a park, or masking their 2-year-old, or a group of friends sitting down for a picnic, but they're all really far spaced apart, it just, and everyone's like the healthiest group, of course, it just makes me just a little concerned and worried. Thankfully, there's more people that are standing up against it, and there's a whole lot of people that see through it. Unlike with 9/11 early on, there was a lot of people that were buying it hook, line, and sinker, and the truther in those days was very few and far between. Now, maybe after 9/11, with all the conspiracy theorists and all the alternative media having already exploded, now there's a lot of people that are already know what the hell's going on. But it's clear that the COVID hysteria, they're just continuing and pushing it, right? So viruses are going to virus. That's what they do. And whether there's lockdowns, mask mandates, this policy or that policy, it seems like the virus has the same type of curve. It shows up, arrives on the scene, it spikes, and then it trickles out. This is something Jack Spirko pointed out. It trickles out in like 6 to 8 weeks. And it's worked its way throughout the globe, right? From country to country. The United States of America is a giant country, an empire, and it's topping its way from here to there. Northeast, LA, Washington was where it first was, then through some of the Midwest, then Texas and Florida. And it's like, oh my God, Florida, there's dead bodies piling up. That was never the case. And now it's making its way through smaller areas. And really what's being blasted out now is the case-demic. I still see people posting a picture of accelerating cases and cases freaking out, stay home, don't do Thanksgiving. The cases are largely irrelevant. That's what viruses do. They make their way through. There's more increased testing. Whenever there's like a chicken and the egg scenario, when the media starts priming and pumping about more cases and dark winter, then people are going to go get tested more often and find that a lot of people actually are carrying the virus. And again, the virus is very impotent for most people, except for that small percentage of people that's elderly or has pre-existing conditions. And then there's outlier events where a 28-year-old that doesn't have pre-existing conditions gets sick, and of course the media pumps that and blasts that all the way out, even though it's happens in an extreme rare instance. You would think that would happen because of the coverage that it gets. But it's clear that COVID's been on life support for some time, and they're just continuing to pump it and prime it, and they're doing so with cases. And then another thing, the virus is not only becoming less deadly, but there's more therapeutics. Doctors understand more how to do treatments. There's more available. It first worked its way through elderly and through sick populations and through nursing homes. That's perhaps why there was much more death in the beginning. Now it's starting to cool down. And so that people don't see through this is just absolutely ridiculous. Like the infection fatality rate for my age group is like 0.02% of people that get the virus die. For the age group above me, it's 0.5%. And then for 70 and older, it's 5%, 5.4%. Now, bear in mind, that doesn't mean 5.4% of people that are 70 and older think it's the virus that will die. There's 5.4% folks that were already sick, that have pre-existing conditions, and had all sorts of problems. So I just want people to think about all this stuff. And I don't know what the answer is. I'm just going to keep on keeping on myself. There's no lockdown that's going to stop me. I'm thriving in my business and my life. And I hope that more people can start living and understand that a significant portion of the population is at very low risk for this virus. There's other countries like Sweden, for example, that is a great example. They did the herd immunity, hardly lockdown, and now the deaths, there's hardly deaths whatsoever. There's days of 0 deaths. So, if Biden ends up taking office, we can expect there to be more lockdowns. We can expect there to be more mask mandates. We can expect the vaccine perhaps to be mandatory in some areas. That may happen even if Trump stays in. So it's important for all of us to think for ourselves, to encourage those of us around us to think for ourselves, to live free, to form resilient communities. So if we get shut out of commerce, are not allowed to go in grocery stores, we can trade amongst ourselves, we can hire one another, we can do our thing. And I just want to shout out all the folks that are not wearing masks and that are living free and that are shaking hands and that are hugging people not in their household. I want to shout you out. I know that sometimes it can be uncomfortable and sometimes you can feel like you're out of place or you're going to get blasted. But it's you with those smiling faces and those pearly teeth that are making the difference. And I know that there's people on the fringes as time goes on. They call it COVID fatigue, right? But I also think it's a mental fatigue because you start to realize that there's some bullshit going on. And it's those smiling faces. It's talking calmly, rationally, with friends and family, that's going to make all the difference. We got to stay positive. Even though there's some crazy stuff going on, there's still a lot of beauty. There's still a lot of freedom in the world. And there's still a decent number of people that come to the park by themselves or with their family or even friends. And they don't wear masks. And they understand that the virus isn't completely floating all around us. On another note, actually, there was this meme that was passed around, and it's like, if you could see the virus, would you still go outside? And it had a picture of like a city with little COVID viruses all over, like everywhere. And it's like all dark, and then the red viruses just spread out in the air on the city block. And my initial inclination was like, that's totally ridiculous. That's not how it is. But Zach Bush, MD, Z-A-C-H Bush, MD, great last name, by the way, is somebody that you should definitely look into. He talks about how many viruses and how much bacteria is in our body. And then our body is actually over 50% of the cells in our body are foreign cells, foreign DNA. he also points out that viruses literally are all around us, and they can come in through waves of air and gusts, and they can spread out and they get piggyback on particulate matter. So, and there's air, his theory is that the areas that have more pollution were hit harder and had a higher infection fatality rate, like Wuhan, China, for example, like Northern Italy, like New York City. And so, on the one hand, I don't think there's this deadly virus floating all around us everywhere. And on the other hand, there are viruses all around us everywhere all the time. And our body is comprised of viruses. And without viruses that form a symbiotic relationship with human beings, we wouldn't have evolved to the place that we are today. So just something to consider. We need not be so scared of viruses and other human beings and scared of getting sick. We ought to focus on our immune system and staying happy, staying healthy, eating well. There was a mask on the floor, and I was reminded of my good friend Emilio Cronus. He always would take pictures of masks, and he would say, somebody left their immune system on the floor. So let me hit up some of these comments real quick. I'm trying to hold this. My arm's getting tired, and my dog's pulling me around here. Let me hit some comments real quick. People have bought into this fear, Jenna Dodge says. Yeah, I know. It's unfortunate. But there's a lot of people that have bought into bravery as well. Agora is cute. Yeah. Agora. Rebecca, my girlfriend, named him. He's got little gray on his beard. So it's black and gray. Agora. Hey, look at you. Woo-hoo-hoo. It's a good dog. He needs to be wearing a mask. Jenna Dodge says, I have still this whole time. Still haven't got. Good for you, girl. Like, I don't even flu. And I say this and knock on wood, if I get exposed to the virus, that it wouldn't really even multiply in my body. It would just get taken care of because I have a nice mineral supplement. Take elderberry, Q-Certain, and I don't do a whole lot of antibiotics. Probably done maybe 2 or 3 things of antibiotics in the past decade. So my gut microbiome is in good shape. So really, that's what it's all about. That's all well more. Those few 9/11 truthers, those few truthers, find it like yesterday. Yeah, that's the sad thing too. Like 9/11 was such an obvious false flag, but here we are, over 20 years later, or 20 years later, 19 years later, and people still haven't been brought to justice. So, man, oh man. In Philly, without wearing a mask, my mayor just shut everything down again, ruining people's lives. There's a lot of authoritarians too. Like, I don't think all of the city level bureaucrats and the mayors, not all the governors, are in on some grand conspiracy. It's bullshit, or maybe it was made in the lab. It's all part of ushering in this great reset. But a lot of these bureaucrats, especially Democrats and left leaning, especially the more radical left, they kind of get off on control and feel like we were put in this position and I was elected to help people and I went to this college and got my master's degree in public administration and I know what's best for people and I'm a hero now, right? Not all heroes wear capes. With postal workers, that's on the door of the post office. And so a lot of what they're doing is like this Debbie do-gooder feeling like it's their civil service to lock people down and save people. And here's something that's really important that Tom Woods does a lot of great work when it comes to COVID stuff. And one of the things that he pointed out was that these public health officials, they focus on one thing, health, and minimizing risk for health outcomes and death, right? And they want to have as few deaths as possible. But a public health official who are in large part making decisions, or the executive branch is relying on the scientists and will do whatever the scientists say, right? They don't have the numerous factors to consider that we, the people, have in our lives. We need to consider our income. We need to consider our mental health. We need to consider our relationships. We need to consider that our child is getting married and we have had money saved up in order to help pay for the wedding. We need to consider our health. We need to consider our grandparents, our parents' health. Are we taking care of elderly parents? Are we not? Are we single? Do we just live our own life? Do we have healthy kids and we're young and we never really come into contact with folks in the nursing homes. There's so many different factors, and for there to be a one-size-fits-all, top-down, hierarchical, coercive control paradigm, that doesn't work for me. People should be able to take risks if they want. And at the end of the day, if there are people that are at risk, then we should rally around those people, support those people. Those folks can shelter in and people can go about life, because there's so many secondary indirect problems that we're experiencing, right? What you see on TV, what you see on the news is just death and cases and hospitalizations. They hardly cover the increase in alcoholism and substance abuse. They hardly cover the increase in domestic disputes. They hardly cover, well, they cover the increase in unemployment. They especially banged on that to probably hurt Trump, I would imagine. There's so many different factors. They don't cover as much the business that busted out, where they put their life savings in, and maybe they declared bankruptcy 20 years ago, but they managed to claw their way back up to their business success and income for their family. They don't cover that kind of stuff. You know, there's a lot to weigh. I think that we are going to see more destruction, more economic destruction, more famine, more negative mental health outcomes. And bear in mind, a lot of this is a perfect play and a perfect ploy to crash, destroy, and burn so things can be rebuilt, right? Build back better. That's all part of the Great Reset, which is this clever marketing campaign for New World Order 2.0 that wants to usher in a fourth industrial revolution, essentially have a surveillance society panopticon. It all makes perfect sense how this is all being rolled out. And while I'm not fond of their ends, I do admire the fucking treachery and cunningness of this manipulative power elite that is taking advantage of COVID-19, or they made COVID-19 happen. It's no good. Oh, Rika says, get your finger off the mic. All right, hopefully it wasn't too bad for too long. Mask shop with a handful of mates. We still the only folk in shops in my rural area without. All right. Much better. Gracias. Get it. Amazing thing. Sabretooth says, hey, John, keep up the great work. You're brave. I am brave. I do not consent. The Matrix is crumbling around the new world order. Look at these guys. Look, 3 dudes, no mask. I bet they're not in the same house. Yeah. Those are my people right there. My crew. All right. Beverly says, if you and others who refuse to wear masks were not in this nation, we would not have the virus right now. Just a fact. It would be controlled. Your risk-taking is causing the secondary problems for everyone. Well, Beverly, I'm just going to have to respectfully disagree, especially considering that there's many places where they have almost complete mask wearing and the virus still spreads just the same. Not to mention, there's quite a few people that wear masks. Almost everyone wears masks, especially in certain areas. There's some areas that are governed and everyone is wearing a mask and the virus still spreads. So I'm sorry that you believe wearing a mask is a panacea when it comes to health, but that's simply not the case, especially considering a lot of people wear. Look at that. Look at that. Come on, you chill out. Jeez, he sounds like a Democrat. So there's a lot of people that wear those masks that are like neck masks, and there's a lot of people that wear bandanas, and there's a lot of people that wear these kind of dimpy cloth face coverings, and a lot of that stuff doesn't even help. The virus is so damn small and microscopic that it can go in and out of all those threads. Not to mention there's been studies that show when people talk and some of those masks actually spread out their little globules, or whatever they're called, their saliva, it makes it break up into even smaller pieces that's even lighter in the air, so it's able to travel further. So I'm sorry, Sister Beverly Safford Ash, but the mask ain't gonna save you. And it's not people like me that are spreading any virus around to anyone. I'm a healthy person, and we live in a backwards world when the healthiest of people are considered risks and considered harming other people. So I've spent a considerable amount of time. I've made sacrifices. I've worked really hard on my health. I've suffered through things. I haven't gone to the doctor. I've managed to heal myself on numerous occasions. And I can assure you, I'm not getting the flu. I'm not getting COVID or SARS. I'm not spreading anything to anyone. The virus is a virus. contagious. And even if you lock down, if you go out and try to find a correlation between virus spreading or negative health outcomes in areas that lock down versus areas that didn't lock down, and areas that have a hardcore heavy duty mask mandate, and areas that don't have a mandate, areas that have hardcore heavy duty contact tracing, and areas that don't have hardcore heavy duty or any contact tracing for that matter, and there is no correlation. These are the facts. So you got to think critically, my friend. You got to think for yourself. For real. All right. This is John signing out. Go back and hang out with the kids, pick up some groceries. Sorry if my finger was on the microphone. I'm gonna have to pay more attention to that.